What's your name?
Hi, I'm Neha.
What?
Neha.
Neha, nice to meet you. You're going to have a minute to pitch and get feedback.
Okay.
Are you feeling ready?
Yep.
Awesome. What are you building?
So we're building BuyerSidee, which is your personal guide to home buying. The concept is putting the buyer first. If we imagine buying a home is one of the most important decisions people have in their lifetime. Unfortunately, currently that system is broken. We feel that first-time home buyers are confused, overwhelmed, and frustrated at times in their home buying journey. With BuyerSidee, we want to fix that problem. Using AI, BuyerSidee aims to provide better summaries, risk analysis, better offer strategies, and a personalized approach to this home buying process. We aim to target the $2.5 trillion real estate market, and 30% of this is owned by the first-time home buyers. In long term, BuyerSidee aims to create a buyer-driven database, which will give us a data platform in the long run, which will be transparent and crowdsourced as compared to broker-controlled MLS system.
That's about a minute. We're going to give a round of applause. The immediate feedback that I want to give you is we didn't have a lot of the how, right? So I know what problem you want to solve, but I know almost nothing other than you said AI at some point. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll have that conversation now, but that's like my overall feedback, whether you think about an elevator pitch or maybe the first conversation you have with an investor, it has to be so much about what's different right after you mention the problem and do a little bit of world building. So think about, kind of the density of where you're living. I would love a lot more of the how. Should we start? Yeah. Let's start with what the product is, touch and feel today, or if you're pre-launch, what you imagine the first iteration to be.
So I'll maybe walk you through what does it look like if somebody's using the application. So imagine a buyer, you're new to the process, you're a first-time buyer, you have no idea. So what we expect you to do is, come to the application, to a platform, fill in some details, we create a profile for you. And then I'm assuming that you've, finalized the area where you're looking and you want to go and look for a property. Currently, the current system we have doesn't give you options in terms of the current, platforms, doesn't tell you what you should look in a property. Using AI, our system will tell you, based on an address and the profile you have, what you should actually look in a property. The kind of questions. It can be something as simple as, if there's a basement, look for radon gas, things like that.
Look for what in basement?
A basement.
So there's a basement, and the house is 30 years. I'm just giving an example. Say it's a 30-year-old house and it has a basement. Our recommendation would be, get radon gas tested. Those are the kind of questions we will recommend. Again, not going through each one of them. The other thing is, we would be asking you to give us disclosures, sellers disclosures, and we will be doing a risk analysis on that. I think that's pretty powerful because a lot of times buyers get into these houses and there's a regret later on. Or we didn't know this was wrong with the house, we didn't.
Where does this start journey-wise? Like where am I in the home buying process when you want me to use your platform?
Okay. So assuming in this particular case, you're a first-time home buyer and you're looking at properties. So
I'm still looking, am I browsing the web or am I close to buying?
You're not close to buying. So you are a first-time buyer, you're just browsing in this particular scenario. You will open the platform, you'll go and look for a property. Again, as a first-time home buyer, you're totally dependent on your agent, but we will tell you what to look for based on your profile and your address, which is something which has never been before, right?
I guess maybe help me. I've never tried to buy a home. And so when you say we'll help you know what to look for, I'm imagining browsing Zillow and I go aren't there filters that'll help me know what I'm looking for? And I know there's risks. So you might say, if there's a basement, you might want to look for this sort of last time it was evaluated by XYZ professional.
I would think it more in terms of a personalized checklist. So for example, when you set up your profile, you told us, I want something which is closer to the house. I want something which is in this price range. I want something which has...
So some of this is discovery in the same way as Zillow. Okay, got it. I guess maybe, again, pitch feedback, and we're going to find out more. I think we're still, wanting to find out more. But in my head, I'm going, the pitch left me thinking this was a lot about not discovery stuff. I don't know why in particular. And so there's something about the dynamic of where we're living that I was a little bit confused about.
I think we would think it from a different perspective. I think when you look at Zillow, right? Zillow is coming from a seller's perspective. So the seller's telling you a house has these, features. It's a seller's listing, if you think about it. I, as a seller, I'm telling you my house is so-and-so. These are the details. But from a buyer's perspective, we are telling you what are the red flags you can look in a property.
This, by the way, so far is the most compelling, set of sentences or sentence that you've said this entire time. And it's because you made very clear the difference that your targeted stakeholder makes of the impact of the experience, right? A buyer, I even would probably use Zillow as part of your pitch and go, here's what you're usually getting. You're getting what a seller wants you to see.
Yeah.
But the reality is a buyer has a whole bunch of other concerns or should have a whole bunch of other concerns, but they don't even know where to begin. I like that.
Yeah, I think getting the magnitude of what can go wrong is important to start.
Okay.
I would just get away from it's difficult, it's painful. Those are abstract concepts.
As soon as you said that, I was like thinking of TikToks I've seen of like a home buyer goes, oh yeah, I bought this home and suddenly my basement's flooded and this person screwed me.
So I think getting to like the immediate, like you say, oh, buy insurance because you do it. And then you say, my brother messed up his nerve in his shoulder because he didn't wear a helmet. Like that's why you do it. So I think saying what we have here is the biggest investment you'll probably make in your life financially can have about a 30 to 40% drawback in terms of like just getting to the clear order of magnitude of what can happen. I think that point you made about there are many seller-focused listers out there where you are given the best version of the story. And if you haven't bought a home before, it's like being a second-time founder where it's, all the things focus on distribution rather than product, et cetera. Saying, you wish you had somebody who had gone through the journey, had been a grizzled veteran of buying homes on your side saying, hey, look for this, look for that, like a warning label detector on your shoulder and going through. I think it's verifying disclosures, checking for risks, and noticing all the little things that an inspector might pick up on that you know how to ask the questions in advance of.
Yes.
I think those three things, by saying biggest investment, buyer side, these specific parts we help with, and making sure that you don't miss that part that causes it from being your dream home to becoming a money pit because you face reality too late. I think that's where you make it more emotionally immediate, more declarative of what the value is. So I'd say all of those nice, like, oh, let me tell you the story of like, it's painful. Like, no, here's matter of fact, brass tacks, the pain, the risk, and the outcome.
Well, and then the next thing, whether it's part of the pitch or is the next conversation that I'm curious about now, is the mechanisms with which you use to deliver the value. So I'm going to use actually an example. Again, now that we're in this conversation, my brain has just started to run. So we can tell we finally unlocked a lot. When my mother bought our house in New Jersey in 2003 or 4, a few years later, what winds up happening is there's like heavy rain. I don't know if it was like, I was a kid, so I can't remember if it was like a big deal sort of hurricane or storm or something. And what winds up happening is we're on a sloped street. Our backyard turns out to be a little bit of a basin for the street on the way. And so as this happens, it floods. Even though we're in the middle of, by the way, this slope, we've kind of got this dip. It floods our backyard, it floods our basement, it floods our driveway. I remember the firefighters coming with like every pump in the city to like help our house in particular. Turns out there was one related document that eventually we found with the town about this issue that they had seen in the past. How would you know something like that? And this gets to the mechanism question that I think an investor who likes what Mike's just been talking about, which is the concept of how you experience this as a buyer uniquely compared to your current purchase experience. But then I want to know, how do you get those sorts of insights, given that I assume this information isn't easily accessible? Again, it's not going to be on Zillow.
Okay. So I think for us, maybe I'll just go back to the last point I said. I said in the long term, I envision buyer site being a data aggregation of disclosure insights plus plus buyer inputs. So say a buyer comes and sees a property first or second time and give us some inputs. We won't need a lot of our models should be able to generate, insights and aggregate this data as we go forward. So coming to your question, the first time we will give you questions, we'll give you insights, but we'll not be the best. As this happens, as we churn this forward, I think eventually the models will every profile a buyer
Can
creates.
I tell you something?
Yeah.
I went from being zero excited about this concept to quite excited. And again, it was the unlock of the experience and then this unlock. And I realized that you had mentioned this, right? But before we knew that stuff about where exactly you're differentiating in terms of the purchase experience in a very discrete way, this information asymmetry thing, because it also then provided context for what you just said, which is now a data moat. And a data moat that has to do with user input and user input that will be hard for other people to get by over time, especially if you're the market leader in this space, and in a modality that I don't think, again, I haven't been a home buyer, but I don't think any of these other providers, A, have today, so you can't do this on Zillow, and B, they wouldn't be incentivized to do it either because of their business models.
Yes.
So all of this begins in my head to unlock, and again, I don't know, Mike, are you with me in that you got here late in this conversation, or did you have it earlier and I was missing some key stuff?
It was the later part. I think it was, yeah.
So again, like think about all the things in the latter part of this. How do you bring that to the initial portion of the pitch a lot more discreetly? Because, wow, I like that a lot now.
Okay. Maybe I'll get you a little more excited and add one more thing to it. So I think one of the other key area where I see we add value is, say you, again, on the journey, you went to the house, you loved it, and you want to make an offer now, right? I think one of the biggest struggles we see in the market today in the competitive areas is, bidders, like buyers getting outbid. So it's like guesswork. You go and look at comparables and you're like, okay, you talk to your agent, give me some numbers, and they give you and you bid. I think what we are trying to do is so imagine all the insights data we have. You talked about it, the document insights data we have, inputs we are gathering, contingencies we have. We will be able to predict. It's not Zestimate. So there's a difference. Zestimate is a number. We are giving you a number, but then we are giving you other things as well. For example, we are telling you the kitchen was updated for $50K, lower down your offer. So things like that. Again, we are not becoming a broker dealer. We are just giving you an offer to understand. And I feel
who's paying for this?
Okay, in terms of the business model for us. So for business,
because I like that, by the way, another thing I really like. So we're getting to like a lot of great features.
So I think initially, as I said, we want buyers to come to our site. So we're not going to charge them. So the business model for buyer site would be the mortgage lenders, because obviously you're buying a house. We'll put ads for mortgage lenders, and we're talking about an entire journey, right? The time you're thinking about it to the time you're closing, right? So we're talking about inspection agencies, escrow companies, attorneys. So those become and in the long run, coming to the part where we become the buyer inputted data model, that at that stage, insurance companies, because before anything happens to the houses, insurance companies would know much more. Banks would know before, what is the stage of your house before, going to the MLS systems, which are much controlled by the broker dealers currently.
This might sound trivial, but I think, again, in the sake of, especially have you raised any money yet?
No.
When you're fundraising, some of the trivial stuff can really matter. Yeah. I really unlocked the whole idea of the name of the company, BuyerSide, again, after all this conversation.
Okay.
I would almost in that initial pitch go, so we're building BuyerSide because we're on the buyer side, or something like that. Like, really emphasize it. And it might be like cringe, but like I didn't put that together until all of this, which required also context and whatever. But I think if you say that initially, then my brain starts to look for, okay, how are you on the buyer side? And so that'll immediately get me to, because otherwise it just sounds like a clever home buying name versus a stance you're taking.
Actually, I was very nervous. My exact line, which I was supposed to say, and tell me if this makes sense. So it was buyer side, buyer first personal guide. But I just so nervous.
Buyer's first personal guide. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think getting to the point is like even more of like the David and Goliath kind of energy, like helping you counteract with the fluffy story of the seller side sling, which is like a little bit more
visceral. Yeah.
Visceral. Yeah.
Okay. Any other feedback?
I think going for the main points you had of going very specific on the value props. Don't forget the important questions. Make sure you're checking all the important facets and put a bid in that's not going to cost you an extra $200,000 or cost you the house of your dreams.
Okay.
I think those are the 3 value props that you want to get to as quickly as possible. Okay. I think you have great stories you can tell if you had a 5-minute time. If you have 1 minute where you have to make it real fast.
Okay.
Anything that is not clearly, directly a valuable bullet point, get rid of it.
And I'll say, by the way, it's not just 1 minute. It's very rare that you're going to be an elevator. Yeah. Sometimes it'll be. Even the first few minutes of a longer pitch meeting where you've got a deck, I still think you can lose people immediately in the first 2-3 minutes. So Mike's point there, I think, make sure, again, if you have an extended conversation because someone liked your pitch at a bar and said, let's have a meeting tomorrow, then maybe you can be a little easier on like front loading. But if it's almost from scratch, the first 2-3 minutes, you can lose them in this process. And again, it's even where their brain goes, isn't what they think your product is. But it's super compelling. Thank you, Neha, for sharing. Good job.
Thank you.
This is one of those things where the business model I worry about.
Yeah.
She had good answers. Like, I think that's the only right answer, unless she came up with something more clever along the way. But those sound like good enough answers. Do you worry about that early? Because those, while they're the right answer, the only potential answer, the obvious answer, they still feel sticky, right? Like, you don't like when you can't charge somebody. It's not SaaS. It's not part of the buying experience at a core, but it's the right answer anyway. Do you go, okay, great, they'll figure it out? Or do you start to interrogate this early as an investor?
I think it's back to the very simple fundamental of, is this an of course decision?
Right.
Are they going to, of course, feed the data into the platform to make it smarter? I don't know. Are they, of course, going to be open to recommendations if you build enough trust? I think so.
Right.
So it's really saying, where does it feel like you're trying to dig a tunnel through a mountain, or you're building an aqueduct around the outside of like, that just follows the laws of behavioral physics?
For me, this would be an of course.
I think
From a behavior standpoint.
I think, yes, my biggest question I have is how are they going to go to market, make people understand that journey very quickly?
Yeah.
So it's a customer education side and an ease of acquisition. If they have to get to a certain mass just to get people to have enough density.
It's a huge cold start problem with the data.
Yeah. And the data, but also mortgage lenders, anyone on that side, they need to see enough people on the platform that they're willing to even engage in a conversation.
Although I wouldn't be worried about pricing initially. I see your point.
It's more of getting a conversation, get people to sign on.
Right.
If you say, I have 10,000 people waiting, that's different than saying, hey, we're starting up. Would you like to partner? Because that's also their brand on the line.
Yeah.
So I think it's
super
getting momentum to people buying in and leaning in.
I like this of course framework. Let's use it for the rest of the pitches too. I'm going to talk to you afterwards about the of course.
It's a very easy way to break down pitches.
Well, at least to your point though, you're specifically saying, and I think this is important for founders to know, you're saying you don't want a go-to-market person. You don't want a founder, unless you think it's like so obvious from an economic perspective, but you don't prefer the bet that's around the mountain. Some investors don't mind because they might believe that that's a good idea and a good market. And so it is a go-to-market bet of like, I think this founder can execute better than other people. You want a behavior change, or you want...
Well, I would clarify on that. I think it's going around the mountain means you're aligned with behavior. You're not trying to put a ton
I see.
So it's instead of hiring 1,000 SDRs to get you all the customers you need, which is digging a tunnel.
You're talking about friction, really. Okay.
Yeah. If it's frictionless to get to people where, I share something at a happy hour, that person knows 5 other industry execs, they happily share it. They all say, of course we need that. That's where you get the aqueduct. It's like, the water's going to flow. It's not hard.